Hello and welcome to another episode of Phishing for Answers. Today I have Paul Sheth, and he is the CISO of actually a few different companies. So I'm really interested to talk to him and get his perspectives. I'd love to have you sort of start by introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit about how you got into cybersecurity, what you've done since you've been in cybersecurity, all that fun stuff.
Absolutely. I won't spend too much time on myself and my background, but it's important to kind of. I grew up in the infrastructure world, and then the application world way back in the day with GTE Telecom slash Verizon Bell Atlantic merger, City of Carrollton, and local, state, federal government. So been through the paces, and then worked for other large multinational telecoms as well as startups across the last 27 years. Grew up as a infrastructure guy that turned into a cybersecurity guy. Back then, infrastructure guys were cybersecurity guys, and so kind of naturally came to me from a security perspective, right? Along the way, I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of these large and small and medium-sized organizations on many different pieces of the puzzle, including OTT and other pieces, as well as manufacturing and other areas. So kind of well-rounded across the board, everything from consulting to internal companies. That's led me to where I am today, which is my first occurrence of a sports league at the Women's Tennis Association. So
That's awesome. I imagine uh, the U.S. Tennis Association must have a lot of unique threats. Just being in sports, yeah, I've had a little bit of opportunity to work for professional sporting leagues in the past. Never tennis though, so I'll be interested to hear about that. Um, let's sort of jumping in. Um, I found that most people in cybersecurity have something about some aspect of cybersecurity that they are particularly passionate about. Is that true with you? And if so, what is it?
my one thing that I'm passionate about is risk management, and that's
Okay.
it, right? And I say passionate, and that's it from a perspective of that encompasses everything.
Yes, it does.
Everything in security is about risk management. It's about balancing that usability, that security. While we want security, we want to make sure we balance that with the right amount of forethought, right amount of usability, right amount of user experience along with the on the journey, while you enable and solve business problems, opportunities, and challenges, right? And that's really at the crux of kind of my tenet of everything we do. It's not about so heavy-handed on security that you literally can't do your job at the end of the day. So you're paying me to sit there and while I click through 15,000 things to get to one thing that takes 2 seconds, right? To
Yeah.
balancing on the flip side. So it's really about that aspect of it. That's really what encourages me, entices me. I think most folks in the industry we're probably focusing on that as well as is risk management. You have your normal, all of your NIST guidance and all of the other pieces that we'll all follow from a security perspective. But again, guidance and frameworks are there to lead you. But at the end of the day, you as a risk manager day to day, the business is a risk manager. The users are risk managers, right? We just have to
Yeah.
teach them, educate them, or make them aware, and that's really what drives me forward.
I like that you said it. It's all about risk management. One of the things that I found is, I guess I'll take my hands off this so it stops shaking on my face. It's probably distracting. But one of the things that I found is that a lot of people that are newer to cybersecurity tend to be very, they think their job is to eliminate risk, not manage and communicate risk. And I found that as people get it, are in this industry longer and longer, they tend to, really understand, hey, our job is to balance the, business and functionality and really just help advise on risk so that they can make informed decisions. Have you found that to be the same? Did you have any of that yourself? I know for me, I had a God moment at the beginning where I was like, it's my network. It's but did you ever have that throughout your career ever?
I have to be honest. The answer is yes, right? And the reason why I say that honestly and transparently is we grew up in a different world than what it is today. And the risk and had the risks that have come into play today in some cases didn't exist. If you look at back at Windows 3.11, really back in the day, to Windows 95, it was kind of like a significant sea change of difference in how they operated from a risk profile. To
Yeah.
Windows XP to 2000, 2000 to XP to Windows 10 and 11 and what have you. And I'm using the Microsoft example because in each iteration of that, which is like an iteration of yourself as a security professional, you have to continue improving yourself. Microsoft would never have spent this much money in security as they do today, as an example. So is every other organization focusing on that? Because the risk posture and has changed across the board. It
Makes
was
sense.
a my way or the highway when I first started in the industry, which didn't really work well for me, to be honest with you. Right? I had to pivot, and that pivot was listen to the actual users, listen to the actual risk that is occurring, and then come up with formulas that make sense for success for both, where you can take care of the risk or manage it or mitigate it. You are never going to be able to eliminate risk completely. That's like a zero sum game. It's like
Yeah.
saying zero trust security is going to solve everything. It doesn't, right? It's the same thing as, well, we do phishing education and awareness, and that's all we do. Well, that's not going to solve your entire
Yeah.
issue in configuration of issues that you have. You have to have a managed portfolio and a risk tiering and multiple layers of defense as you build it through to make sure. And your multiple layers of defense could be everything from a system, a procedural, and actual control to anything else that you have in there, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of building on all of that.
No, that makes perfect sense. I think a lot of it sort of comes naturally because, so often, what's the first thing you learn in cybersecurity? You learn about the ID10T error or just tech in general. Forget about cybersecurity. Just when you get into tech, you start learning about things like the ID10T error and you can't patch stupid and stuff like that. So I think that, a lot of that sort of comes naturally. But as we sort of grow, we learn no, we're all on the same team. They have different skill sets than I have, and it's our job to complement each other. Um, so
Absolutely.
from a cybersecurity and risk management perspective, there must be, or is there a single threat that concerns you more than others, or that for proverbially keeps you up at night, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of organizations have opportunities for success around phishing, right? I think phishing, ransomware are kind of the ones that is a single attack vector that is still widely exploited, that is probably still one of the largest exponential threat attack vectors coming into inbound into any organization, small, medium, large, nonprofit, doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
And I think businesses at the larger end of the spectrum, you have the ability to buy a ton of tools and services and what have you, and can lock them down like Fort Knox and move forward. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have a small business where every dollar matters and what you spend on, and it has to be receptive spend and resourcing and related. So, phishing, ransomware, I think is kind of still the one that keeps me the most, discouraged, if you will, that there's still it hasn't been solved to a degree that it's 100% and probably will never be, because as we dance, they dance, right? As I say, right? So we fix something, they're pivoting to moving to a different direction to find another vector back into that phishing or awareness. So nonetheless, it's kind of very challenging from from my perspective to keep caring for that. So that's why we continue focusing on that, along with security awareness and effectiveness. So as an example, if you look at the average click-through rate on a phishing campaign across all industries is somewhere in like the 32 to 35 range, right?
Yeah, it's
Which,
high.
if you think about that click-through rate, 32 to 35%, that's one third. That's pretty high number. And that's
Incredibly
today.
high.
That's
Yeah.
2024, right? Maybe the year numbers are a little outdated, 2023 or 2022,
Yeah.
but it hasn't dramatically changed to where it's 5% or 2%. The click-through rate is still very high.
Yes,
So
it
so
is.
that's pretty important from a awareness perspective to share why we should do everything on the phishing and ransomware and other pieces.
So on the phishing side of things, I agree. I think that that is one of those areas that everyone's the most concerned about, and most of ransomware starts with phishing as well. So it's not just that you'll get that business email compromise that leads to wire fraud. It could just as easily be the ransomware attack. Um, so I think most people that's sort of their biggest concern. What types of things are you doing from a phishing simulation and awareness perspective throughout your enterprise?
Great question. Starts with education. So education is key. Your normal security providers that offer training are valuable in this space. They're all good. We use one. You could be using another one or looking at another one, but they're all equally prone to providing a decent product out there. So that security awareness is great. The key thing about the security awareness that I want to share with the audience and with you is it's not about beating down the user. It's really not. It's about encouraging them to recognizing what is a business email compromise, right? And
Hmm.
what looks like a phishing campaign or what looks like something else or a smishing campaign or whatever it may be. I kind of lump those all together into that one bucket of attack vectors. But and it's really important to do that consistently across a given cycle, a quarter, a month, a year, and keeping them on top of the latest trends. Hey, like this is coming out. These are the current trends. Here's the current type of emails being targeted, right? And there's products out there in the marketplace that will tell you whether it's spare phishing not or what have you.
Yeah.
Everything from your proof points to your abnormals to whoever else. I'm not an advocate of any or all products, by the way. But at the end of the day, find the one that works best for you and your organization. But coming through that, it makes a lot of sense to make sure you educate, you don't beat the user down, you give them an opportunity to come back to you and ask questions, and then answer those questions so that they can understand and help you in the future. Because if they understand, they're going to be the biggest proponent. They're going to be that wall of human folks that's going to help guard against the outside, right, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's going to really bring it into play. So that's one. The other piece is having your systems in place, like
Yeah.
we talked about, right? So I mentioned a couple of vendors in here. Those are fine. There's many others out there. You can use any of those. Make sure your configurations are valid, up to date, that you're, again, balancing the usability with the security. You block too many emails, you're going to be doing too much work
Yep.
and creating a lot of false noise for yourself. Whereas if you have the right amount of balance in the configurations of your tools, you're going to block the right emails, the most critical ones, and maybe you'll have some lower risk tier spam and other pieces get caught. But that's what you're going to do. You're going to, I believe in that firmly, that tuning is very important. And there's products out there that will auto tune. Now, obviously, nowadays, that's also important to find a way to leverage the AI mechanisms, machine learning that you have inside these products to help learn and counter for you as you learn forward. So, those are a couple of the things. And then outside of that, what we do in WTA and in other places that I advise is really just doing in-person sessions, not just your awareness and related. And of course, you in person means you're actually sitting down with users in groups, lunch and learns, and things like that, where you're enticing them with a carrot, whether it be pizza or beer or whatever floats your boat, right? For your organization, you provide that. And then lastly, kind of phishing simulations. Obviously, running your own simulations inside your organization is pretty key because it's going to give you metrics that you can measure against.
Yeah.
What is your click rate? What is your open rate? What is your other pieces that you can measure? How many emails actually went through and got delivered? We even do blind campaigns, which is where the security team does not make the IT team aware of X, Y, and Z. So they're looking at it and going, hey, is this something you guys are running? Well, thank you for catching it. That's fantastic. And thank you for reporting it. That's also fantastic. Right. So Those are kind of some of the first ones, if you would, what I would say.
Yeah, no, all great advice. I noticed that you hit on a bunch of things from running your phishing simulations over to the just general awareness and culture. And you said don't beat up your user, and I see that as being so incredibly true. I still to this day talk to people, even on the show from time to time, that have that sort of 3 strikes and you're out policy within their organization. And I believe that it's incredibly important that we foster that positive relationship, that non-punitive culture, so that we can get better results. In fact, there's behavioral science principles around it. One is called psychological safety, and it talks about how we have to feel safe to learn, and how that if we don't feel safe, we can run the risk of creating this sense of learned helplessness, where somebody that would otherwise be safe becomes all of a sudden the missing or the weak link. And so I think really great advice there. Now, you mentioned a few of your KPIs that you're tracking. But that's another area I'd love to dive into maybe a little bit more. So around phishing, around security awareness, around the human element in general, what are some of the KPIs that you're tracking and that you would advise that your people track? And maybe just for, if there are any benchmarks that you can share freely with the audience, maybe give them an idea of what maybe you would think that they should be expecting to see there.
Absolutely. I would recommend, first of all, from a metrics perspective, there's a few reports that come out pretty consistently out in the marketplace, including the Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report. NoBE4 has a built-in report inside their tool, but they also publish a report about all things phishing, BEC, and related. Right. Proofpoint as well publishes some data internally to customers, also, but externally. So those are some sources. There's probably many other sources of this information that I would just suggest you look at in the audience, right? And just in your organizations as you go through. But one of the big things is we look at the industry average click rate for your industry specifically. And you might have it in some cases, in other cases you might not have, and then you have to fall back on just a general industry average rate, right? But it's how many emails you're receiving compared to how many emails are actually being processed inside your system compared to how many are actually being clicked through, right? And then when you're doing your phishing simulations, you match that up with that. So let's say you did a phishing campaign, it's 5,000 employees. You want to see, does it match up to the industry average, quote unquote? And there's many different industry averages to some of them as a summarization or a mean of them. Is it 30%? Do you track to that, or are you better than that already in the sense that it's 25%? And if you are at 25%, your goal should be 20%, right?
Yeah.
Get better. That's the continuous improvement Kaizen mentality that you should bring. So that's one of them. And then your, fish prone percentage. There's some different mechanisms inside each organization that you should create. Who is fish prone, right? And who is not? Some people are extremely resilient to fish prone. They're just very meticulous in the way they receive some of these BEC emails that are so great looking, and even fake website setup. You all know about those, right? But literally, like it'll click, you click on something, it looks exactly like Microsoft.com, but it's not, right? And then you're entering data, and now off you go to the races from the bad actor perspective, right? So measuring that is important, but creating the measurement is just as equally important for each organization. I don't have like a set formula. Every organization I go into, I look at some of these generalizations, and then I build it for the organization internally to say what makes the most sense for us. What is a fish prone user meant or stakeholder mean to us, and what are they? And you can look at it and say, well, we ran a campaign. The campaign identified 20 users, and those 20 users are recycled over the next 3 quarters. Well, that could be your mechanism for capturing fish-prone users, right? And then you focus with additional education awareness, additional guidance, additional hand-holding to them in the sense that it's a white glove or purple glove service that you provide to them to say, what caused you to click that? And really understanding the behavioral psychology, as you mentioned, but creating that safety net for them so they don't feel like that they're being singled out. It's more about, yes, we're asking you because you did something that could cause a compromise, but we want to understand why so we can help you understand it, and then we can help ourselves get better at it, right? So those metrics are kind of some of the key pieces that I use. And again, there's more metrics in there you can create from that user base of yours to that stakeholder base. Security awareness, obviously, there's metrics around that, which is you usually want 100% on security awareness, right? You want to have 100% has gone through the awareness, 100% have them pass the quizzes, right? So they at least understand generally. And then you want to provide custom short tour, training on that. So how many short form versus long form training awareness did you provide, security awareness, and which one works well for your organization? Is it the mandatory once a year 1 hour session with the quizzes that you entail? And plus, do you want to do the short form, kind of AKA TikTok or Instagram or equivalent or what have you, in short form? And how many short form ones do you want to produce? What has the largest numbers that kind of take uptick, right? So you might find that doing the short form content is really beneficial because now you're targeting it around seasons. Now you're targeting around, for us, it's around our season that occurs every year, also around our specific tournaments that occur every year, around specific events happening in the world, right? So some people would say that's shady, like you're jumping onto an event that's a world event and doing a phishing simulation at the same time. How are they going to recognize the difference between the good and the bad, if you will, in that case? Well, you don't do it every time. You do it once, right? Once a quarter, once a year, with a specific world event that's occurring that could be taking advantage of that BEC or phishing or other pieces, and then seeing what those results be. Are they prone to the news? And then tailoring those KPIs and metrics to kind of match those, if you will, right? So that
Yeah.
you can get the best balance. So mine's not your typical approach. I use a little slightly different skewed kind of balancing with how you want to manage risk inside the company from that perspective. And then, of course, you know your organization's best, which means that you should look at what are your key schedules, events, financial disclosures. If you're a public company, is there potential for that? Can you target around those? All of these pieces. So let me pause there, otherwise I'll keep going on.
No, I think that's good. On the phishing side, one KPI I would add is how many of those phishing simulations are actually being reported back to us.
That's right.
If 50% are being reported back to us, I know about 1 out of every 2 that's hitting my people in the wild is probably making it to my SOC. And I also know that 1 out of every 2 is not being reported back to me as well. And I think that's another one of those metrics that you want to continuously work on driving higher and higher or lower and lower. Win Schwarto actually wrote this book called Analog Security. And one of the points that he makes in there is about how, really most of cybersecurity is not digital. It's far more analog because it's not a 0 or a 1. We're trying to drive as close to 1 or as close to 0 as we possibly can. So, with phish click rates, we want to drive as close to 0 as we can. But, with a report, we want to drive as close to 1 as we can. And so I think that those are really key metrics. And the other thing I would say is that we've got sort of 2 different types of KPIs, in my opinion, in cybersecurity. One of which is, the core API or KPIs, not APIs, core KPIs. And then you've got your leading indicators like phish click rate. That's a leading indicator of other more core KPIs. And so like the core KPIs to me are are we reducing the number of incidents? Are we reducing the time to detection? And are we reducing the time to resolution? And hopefully, if we're driving all of the rest of our metrics, our leading indicators, good enough or close enough to 1 or 0, then we start to see them impact those other 3 core metrics.
I
What's
would
your
agree with you 100%. Trending is also super important, right?
Yeah.
If you understand and capture the trending, then you're going to be able to see from your leading indicators to also your post indicators, post event, post incident. So you can actually capture both the pre and the post, which will really give you a good visual, not only for the board, but for your actual users as well, your stakeholders who are the day-to-day users of the email systems, of the tools and services and applications. So
Yeah, 100%. Another thing that you had hit on was how, in sort of methodology, one of the things that we want to do is, or that you utilize, is that short form content. And I will say that your comment about that more of a TikTok type approach is so critical in our programs, because our average user, their attention span is getting shorter and shorter. Everyone attributes it to social media, but the last study that I saw on this said that the average attention span was 4 seconds. Well, we can't do very much with 4 seconds, but it just goes to show that we need to be trying to simplify and shorten that message as much as possible. And I think that we have a tendency to overcomplicate some of our security awareness training, largely because we tend to task some of our most technical people that are really good at cybersecurity, but maybe not so good at communications, with that, sort of critical communications responsibility. Have you found that to be the case?
yes, absolutely. So communication and transparency is definitely key in any cyber strategy, right? And not just talking phishing, ransomware, etc., but it's just in general. Uptick in that approach is going to get you a lot of wins. You need to get sponsors. You need to have business users that are stakeholders that are going to sponsor security within their own organization, within their own departments, within their own sub teams and related, and pick that up the mantle. If you don't pick up that mantle, cybersecurity is a team sport, has always been. We didn't always treat it as such. We still don't treat it always the same way. We still tend to silo ourselves, but it's more of a team sport than anything else, right? And
Yeah.
being a team sport, you need to collaborate and equip those members that are going to assist you inside each of those different departments, teams, areas of responsibility to help you. You
Yeah.
make them power users, and power users doesn't mean power users in your typical term power users. Power users
Yeah.
means that they're just picking up the mantle and give them a cybersecurity shirt and give them something to be proud of. Give them,
Yeah.
free lunch and learns every quarter for coming to it, and they get a free lunch out of it. The carrot approach works really well, right, with most
Yes,
of
it
these
does.
folks. Communication, like sharing transparently when something has occurred and what you're doing to remediate it, and being timely and responsive will also go a long way towards that stakeholder base, right? In my opinion. So hopefully that answers the question. But if I didn't handle that fully, please let me know.
Yeah, no, you definitely did. And one of the questions I like to ask, I get the impression I already know your answer here because you sort of already answered it a little bit, but it is carrot or stick, and why? And since I get the impression you're very much on the carrot side, maybe a sub question to that is there ever a place when the stick becomes appropriate?
I'll answer in reverse order. There is an appropriateness for the stick, but reserve that, because when you reserve it, it comes in and becomes way more valuable for you, right? You can go in guns blazing, or you can take the other approach, in a mediation approach. Which one's going to gain you more friends? You need friends in cybersecurity, internally especially. You don't need more people that hate security internally for whatever reasons that they have, right? So even answers that are balanced in their nuance, in your culture index and what you create from that culture index is important. And if your culture index is they only listen to the stick, then try to change that culture index, right? Try to move it over to that other aspect. And again, carrot works really well in those cases, but the right carrot is also important, right?
Yeah.
Just there are folks that, as an example, I could say very transparently, we have users that will forget to complete. They're traveling. We travel all the time in the Women's Tennis Association. There's people always moving around. You got to give them flexibility of when to complete that training and
Yeah.
security awareness. But if they don't complete it on time, we do use the stick when necessary, but only when it's absolutely necessary. Until then, we negotiate. Do you need an extension? Do you need 5 days? While you travel back, you're tired. Can you do it on the plane? Do you have Wi-Fi? Do you have this? Can you do it while you're, I don't know, sitting in the airport for 20 minutes? Do you have it while you're at an event or something where you have 5 minutes of downtime, finish the short form version, finish one module, right? Give them tidbits of advice on how they can complete this best, so they know that you're vested in them, that you're not trying to just make this mandatory item come. It is mandatory, but still complete it where it's effective for them. And then follow
Yep.
up with them if they were in a rush at the time when they completed it and their score was, I don't know, passing might be different for every organization. Is it 75%? And they completed at 75%? Okay. Well, we knew they were in a rush. Let's target them for a future follow-up, which would be, let's sit down with you. Let's invite you to an event where you're not free. Let's see if we can help you upgrade your security awareness a bit more, right? And take that approach one-on-one. It might not always be possible for large organizations to do one-on-one. So you have to do one-to-many, pull them into a bucket and try to take that approach. Um,
Yep.
Going to your original reverse question on the stick does come in necessary at some point. You do have to complete it. At some point, you do have to know what's happening in the organization. You do have to place a priority on cybersecurity and hygiene. And if you don't show that because you keep having your stakeholders make, for lack of a better term, whether they're excuses, whether they're delays, whether they're anything else, help them make that. And how you escalate that is important. You have a one-on-one with them first, on your team, on your individual, your service desk, whoever's assisting you in the different programs that you run from a cyber perspective, and have that conversation. And if you still can't get through, then you vertically escalate one by one. Eventually, you'll get to the top somewhere where it will become a priority and will be an issue for them to handle. You don't want it to get to that, but and then they don't either, because last thing they
Yeah.
want is it's for somebody to go up to their boss's boss and say, hey, by the way,
Complain. Yeah.
you didn't complete the security training, right? You don't want to use the carrot of the HR conversation either. Those are, I'm sorry, the stick of the HR
Yep.
conversation. You want to keep that in your back pocket at the worst possible instance, where it's just completely not getting through. You've hit a brick wall or a concrete wall, maybe not even a brick wall. It's more a concrete wall that you can't penetrate through, and it's 10 feet deep. That's when you kind of pull that in.
Yeah, no, I think that, and there's different levels or varying degrees of carrots and sticks as well. I mean, a carrot can be as simple as a compliment. Great job. I can't fool you.
Absolutely.
Whereas, it can go all the way up to that free lunch or even bonuses or whatever, depending on how aggressive the companies want to be. And that stick can be the same thing. Hey, we're going to have to disable your account until you can do your training. It's a light stick, but it's a stick that forces them to go do that. And I think, we don't want to start with that, the really heavy stick. We want to start out with the lightest stick we have and escalate if necessary. But I couldn't agree more. I think, we focus too much on the stick in this industry and not enough on the carrot. And that carrot is really how we change behavior. And the old adage, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, is so incredibly true. And it's pertinent to cybersecurity awareness training in particularly. Um, Okay, so
Absolutely.
I've seen a lot of users in my career get upset because of phishing simulations. Have you ever had anyone get upset? And do you have any, sort of entertaining stories around that you'd love to like to share with the audience? But B, what do you do to offset that and help reduce that sort of exposure that you have that for the potential for users to get upset about them?
Great question. I think they feel duped. That's the
Yeah,
that's the initial piece. They feel duped. Like this is literally a message that is supposed to be fish. You just clicked on it. It's so realistic. Photorealistic is the term that I like to use occasionally. And now I clicked on it and now I'm going to get dinged for it. So they view it in that culture index perspective again, in that negative fashion, right? And it's changing the messaging immediately and saying, yes, you clicked on it. It's okay. That's it's intended to do exactly what it did. Now tell us why you clicked on it. What caused you to think it was real is the more important question, right? And were you in a hurry? There's time constraints. Were you looking for an email similar to this? And yes, in some cases, we target directly because people are expecting emails. If let's use accounts payable, they're
yeah,
expecting invoices. So we send them fake invoices, right? And they will capture it sometimes, occasionally they won't. Across the gamut of my career, that's been the case, not just at
yeah.
WTA. So it's not calling out any specific accounts payable organization, by the way. They're some of my best friends. But the challenge there is how do you help them not get you don't want to blunt it either, right? So you want to be very tactile. You want to be able to show them what they did, why they did it, so that they can avoid it in the future in a friendly, helping way. I know that's kind of resonating throughout this cast that we were on this conversation, but it's really true. It's about the carrot
Hmm.
approach again. It's understanding the human behavior and really balancing that. Even past that, you're still going to have people that say, "Well, I still don't care. You still duped me. I'm still upset about it. I want to talk to your boss. I want to know why we do the way we do it because you're literally not solving the problem. This is just creating more problems for me." And the answer to that scenario is again talk to them about why we do cybersecurity, why we actually leverage the technology, the human elements all together, why cybersecurity exists in the first place, what benefit it has to the organization and the company, and to the world at large, right? And just that let them know that we're part of the same team.
Yeah.
We're here aiming to outsmart the real cyber criminals by fostering that more open communication, by even sprinkling in some humor if you can to make light of some of the things, right?
Yep.
To take some of that initial pushback back, to get them to that little median ground. You might not win the conversation, but you don't need to win the conversation. You just
Yeah.
need to create enough of a balance there so where they understand it. That's the key. They can
Yeah.
still be upset. So
I think a couple additional things there is one thing we can do is connect at home for them. Hey, you want to be able to get a mortgage, right? You want to be able to get approved for that car loan, right?
that's right.
Protect your paycheck, things like that. I all the time see companies put the security awareness into their newsletter, but I almost never see companies put it onto pay stubs. And honestly, I feel like our employees are more likely to pay attention if it's on the pay stub than in that newsletter. But it's just really connecting and finding those opportunities to draw it home and help them understand why it's so critical. And I think the other thing is just being understanding your goals. Like if I'm doing a pen test, I'm going to have a very different phishing simulation than I'm going to have if I'm phishing for education.
That's right.
When I'm doing a pen test, I want to exploit you. I want to see what you'll do. I want to steal your password. I want to get you to run malware on your machine potentially. But when I'm doing it for education, I want you to have just in time education and learning there so that you, at the moment that mistake is realized, when you're most susceptible to learning, that training is there in front of you as well. So,
And I think that's really important. The last part that you mentioned is kind of critical. Um, Learning with just in time training. as it's occurring, while the issue is fresh in the mind, right? And
Yes.
and then drawing the correlation to home. So if you think about it from your perspective that you shared, and I agree with it 100%. We do it. Take a Best Buy purchase you made and aligning that to something at your workplace and a purchase you made there, right? Sliding the credit card. It's the difference is one's personal, one's professional, but it's the same answer. In
Yeah.
the personal side, you could be giving up your bank accounts. On the
Good.
personal side, right? On the professional side, you could be giving up your professional bank accounts, access to the system. So would you want somebody to, correlate that outcome, that result? Do you want somebody to have access to your bank accounts? No. Well, we don't either, right? And it's the same answer, just in a different connotation. And then just kind of closing the loop on this, that enthusiastic participation only occurs when you do that human element of connecting the dots and correlation,
Yeah.
timeliness, that just-in-time piece, and then of course using that and drawing the conclusions and results, and then learning from it, right? So again, we talked about metrics. A couple of things you can pull out of that is, well, the folks that were most susceptible to it, are they still susceptible to it the next time? If the answer
Yeah.
is yes, then we didn't do a good job as professionals in educating them and preparing them. It's preparing them. We didn't prepare
Yeah.
for a hurricane XYZ. Well, that's our fault. We didn't have the right sandbags. We didn't do XYZ. Then that's our fault that we didn't do it, right? Which in this instance of the USA, actually, we've had several instances where we didn't prepare correctly for
Yeah.
those local communities, and there was resulting mass catastrophe. Well, the same occurs in the professional world. You got to prepare. You got to put the sandbags in place. You got to do all the education awareness. You got to pass the leaflets out. You got to know what the results are. You got to know what the outcome of those is, and then measure it effectively from the tail end of it. Is was it successful? How do you measure that
Yeah.
success, right? I'm not going to define that success for you. I can give you 100 metrics, and so could you, but you need to determine what those metrics make the most sense for your businesses, right? We've
Yeah.
given you some examples in today's conversation, but you need to draw those conclusions, and you can ask for advice. There's plenty of people out there, including the two folks on this call, as well as anywhere else, that we can give you lots of advice on how to determine that.
Absolutely. So, along the lines of security awareness, I think, personally, it's changed a lot in the past 12 to 24 months because of AI. So, one of the things that I find that there tends to be some varying opinions about is what AI threats do we currently need to be educating our users about and adding to our security awareness programs?
Fantastic question. AI, machine learning, is all the rage in a positive and a negative connotation. So on
Yes,
the
it
plus
is.
side is it's going to help everyone do better at their jobs. It's going to enable more efficiencies. It's going to enable you to do your world in a much better way. And the
Yes.
negative side, which is something we're learning to deal with, on the cybersecurity side, I would say we're still slower in picking up that. While there's 101 or 1,001 firms coming into the marketplace with AI or machine learning technology, there's still a lot to be desired, right? And from a this conversation perspective, the threats are pretty real.
They
Whether
are.
AI is actually writing that BEC, that phishing campaign for you, or for the bad actor, you can have it both ways. Whatever you can do, they can do it in the opposite. Just
Yes,
remember
they
that,
can.
right? Whatever you can do, they can do it. And in fact, some of the cases are whatever they can do, we need to learn from so that we can protect against it, right? So they
Yeah.
create new attack vectors. They find they take combo password list and username list, and then create a phishing simulation, or not a simulation in this case, an actual attack,
Yeah.
and send it to your organization based on publicly available data and
They
Chat
do.
GPT or equivalent. Bypass the safeguards of Chat GPT is not that hard, honestly, if
No.
you have explored it. The guardrails they've done well, but the good actors and the bad actors both know how to bypass those on either side to make it do what you want it to do. And you can literally craft what you need. You can create code, websites, and on the opposite side, if you want to get up and running, There is literally a multi-billion-dollar business underground for AI machine learning based phishing, VEC, and other pieces that will extract existing data and then compromise it for you, and then provide you answers back for X amount of dollars, $2, $3 for X amount of targeted attacks that you want run, right? I mean, it's pennies on the dollar kind of situation. And
Yeah.
then they rinse and repeat this. So it's not like we are the first innovators on the cybersecurity side. It's actually a lot of the bad actors on the other side of the fence, that are not our friends, that are creating this, that we're learning from, and we need to
Yeah.
continue to evolve and learn from. There's probably quite a bit I'm missing in this conversation today. I have some notes that I don't have access to right this second, but from that perspective, it's the neural combination of neural and machine learning and AI that is really driving that equation to where you can create bots
Hmm.
that can actually do this work for you and extract the data from you. Literally false websites that have been created after a compromise, an initial compromise, that is then further extracting additional details, right, inside that fake website. And now you're getting 2, 3, 4 levels deep within an hour or
Yeah.
less, minutes even in some cases. So the threat is real. The answers are, we've got to stay vigilant, have an AI governance policy on your side, of course, on the good side. But just remember one thing: the bad actors don't have rules.
Yeah.
We have rules. They don't abide by the rules. We do. So we have to act faster and try to keep abreast of them, and also have to try to jump in front of them where we can with innovative technology on the AI and cybersecurity AI side and machine learning side. Create your own products, tools, use the ones in the marketplace, learn from it, and learn what the threat actors are doing, right? That's super, super important to know. Listen to the news, listen to what's happening with organizations, small, large, medium, outside of you, that is publicly available. If you are in the US, you can access, if you can get access to InfraGard and other pieces, listen to the FBI agents, the Secret Service, look at the guidance from NIST, these different sources. You have lots of information overload available to you. You need to
Hmm.
share it in a concise manner. There's lots of AI, machine learning podcasts, and also newsletters out there in the marketplace that you should subscribe to, that should probably give you quick hit information that can say, here's the summary of what I need to do, kind of the
Yeah.
TLDR, if you will, right? Try to
Yep.
get that as much as you can so you can keep abreast of protecting your organization, managing their risk as best possible.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. One of the things that I'll add to that, you said, the bad guys so often are ahead of us. 100%. I see it every day because the phishing simulations, or not simulations, attacks that we see being reported are often role based, whereas so often when we're out in the market talking to people, they don't have role based phishing. They don't even have role based training yet. But the bad guys are already targeting our finance teams directly. They already understand our organizational hierarchy and who reports to who, and that's being used against us. We've already seen deep fakes in the wild. Not just that one in Hong Kong, but we've actually seen them for some of our clients. It's still pretty rare, but they're starting where you're seeing those phishing attacks where it sounds like the actual CEO or CFO and things like that. It's a crazy, absolutely crazy day and age we live in. Technology is just multiplying. It's one of those things that's very difficult to stay on top of because it is changing so quickly. But it's an exciting time as well, because with every bit of risk comes more opportunity, like you were saying. Do you have any sort of last words you'd like to leave with my listeners today?
No, I first of all, thank you to the audience and the listeners for having me, in being able to kind of just listen and have this conversation. Obviously, I am learning. I'm constantly learning. You should too. That's part of the equation here, to leave the message with you. If you stop learning, if you get into a pattern that is predictable about, this is what I think security is and that's what it's going to be, you've already lost part of the battle, part of the war, right? And the battle might be okay, you might survive, but if you lose the war, you'll be looking for a new position somewhere else, and that's what you don't
Yeah.
want. The question
Couldn't
is
have
not
agreed.
about if when you're going to have a compromise. The question is when and how you react, right? And how you react is more important in all instances. And a lot of that can be on the proactive side. With everything we've talked about on this podcast today, it's all
Yeah,
proactive.
it is.
There is a reactive component to this. Don't be in that reactive bucket.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are needing to be in that reactive bucket, be ready, right? The
Mm-hmm.
Monitor attack framework is there to help you. A lot of different systems and tools and processes are there to help you. Industry experts like ourselves are there to help you. We're happy to jump in there. You're welcome to ping me offline. I'm happy to help where I can. And then, of course, I would say do risk assessments, learn from yourself, learn from the industry, integrate insights into your overall risk management strategy, imply your controls where they can, be proactive, learn from your users and your stakeholders, drive machine learning technology into your organization from a pro side of into your products and services, into your day to day, and do the best you can. And I'm sure you will be successful in that regard.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think it's been some really, really great advice. So it's really been a pleasure. I'll have to get you back on here so we can dive in deeper because there's so much we didn't get a chance to cover today. But thank you so much. And as always, thank you for tuning in today.